Howdy. Welcome to Storytime. I'm Murph. I'm excited because we are premiering a story that I have been writing for over 30 years. It's called The Lands. The Lands are a magical place, but maybe the magic has died a little bit. It's a happy place, but there doesn't seem to be much happiness these days. It's a place of fantasy where the fantasy might be dying out and has been for quite a while. It's a great place, and now you get to visit it. Like I said, I've been writing it for over 30 years. There's a lot in it. The first episode, because it's the first one, and the premiere one, there's a lot going on. So it's a little long. It's about an hour and 24 minutes. The rest of the episodes won't be this long. But I invite you to listen. There's a lot of little Easter eggs in it. There's a lot of homages, I will say, to places and people and movies and stories and TV shows that have inspired me and made me who I am today. I'm sure you'll recognize some of it, maybe a lot of it. The lands are probably going to sound a bit familiar to you, but like I said, it's all fantasy. Now, at the end of this episode, stay tuned. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, some things that I'll point out, and maybe you'll hear them as we go along and say, hey, that kind of sounds familiar. That sounds like something. Anyways, without further ado, let's start The Lands. A 1 and a 2, and away we go. Welcome to The Lands, Episode 1, Chapter 1, Something is Happening, Part 1. Quote for this chapter: "The spirit. Ha! What did the spirit ever do for me?" Maddog. "It's so cold," the man said as he sat in the darkness. Although he was wearing a thick coat, the cold was piercing him. He couldn't stop his teeth from chattering. His arms were wrapped around his chest, trying desperately to warm himself up. His fingers had already gone numb, and the shaking had gotten worse. He stood up. I think I'm freezing. Thud. He fell forward and hit his head hard, and lost consciousness. The cowboy rode slowly down the dark paved road. His black hair was peppered with gray and was slicked back. It was undisturbed by the slight breeze. The black and gray stubble he wore as a beard did little to cover the frown on his face. Something in the air was bothering him. Most likely, it was the realization that tonight was the anniversary of one of the saddest days in his life. To his left was the River of Wonder. A keelboat floated by him, another group of travelers heading for some fun. It didn't bother him. He knew the darkness of night would keep anyone from recognizing him. To his right and in the distance was a well-lit building, the final destination of both the keelboat and the cowboy. River's Edge Terrace. River's Edge Terrace sat right at the outskirts of the land known as Orleans. Upon entering Orleans, you couldn't miss it, not just because it practically sat on the edge of the river, nor because it was so massive, but really because it was alive. Part casino, part theater, part restaurant, part dance club, part riverport, it was the source of constant action. Whether because of the shouts of joy or music or the occasional fight, River's Edge Terrace would not be ignored by anyone entering Orleans. Approaching River's Edge Terrace from the lights and the bustle of the city of Orleans, the cowboy was okay with being on the outskirts. He looked beyond the River's Edge Terrace to the stark and empty neutral lands, and missed the days when he could roam them freely. Boy, had things changed. He looked up at the sliver of a moon, then quickly looked away and shook his head. Has it really been 7 years? He asked himself. He looked back up at the moon, and his mind went to a memory he tried to keep locked away. The cowboy was looking at the sliver of a moon as a burst of wind blew with fury, kicking up dirt and debris, which pummeled him and the cowboy behind him. They sat on their motionless horses in a straight line, one behind the other. The one in the back was holding some sort of lit torch that was enclosed in glass. It gave off just enough light to make out the outline of the rider in front of him. The lands were dark. Just ahead of them, the outline of a lone rider could be seen riding slowly towards them. The wind was blowing almost like it was trying to stop him. His hat was low across his brow, and the scarf high to just below his eyes. The sliver of a moon was now darkened by the flying dust and debris, but his horse continued on slowly. The rider just stared ahead, eyes squinted to the point where they were almost closed. It didn't matter. His eyes could have been wide open, but he wouldn't have noticed anything. His mind was far, far away. His thoughts were back to the events that led to where he was right now, alone, riding in the dark of night as the wind smacked him with all it could muster up. As his mind raced, his horse came to a stop. Without even realizing it, he had come upon the two cowboys who were waiting for him. The lone rider looked up at the lead cowboy. His eyes looked worn out and sad. He showed no emotion at all at seeing the two. The lead cowboy tilted his head to guard from the blowing dirt and yelled out, "Mahomes, where do you think you're going?" No answer. The lone rider just stared. The lead cowboy shook his head. "Turn around and get back to work," he yelled. "I'm leaving, Maddog," Mahone said, sounding defeated. "You're doing no such thing," Maddog answered. "Turn around and get back to the lands." Mahone shook his head. "I'm not going back. I'm leaving." Maddog moved closer to him. As he did, the cowboy behind him moved closer, but still stayed behind Maddog. "Come on, Mahone. You can't leave. You just can't leave the lands. Not now." Mahone showed no emotion. He was intent on leaving, and there was nothing Maddog could say or do to change that. Maddog rubbed his eyes and continued, "This isn't over." "It is, Maddog," Mahone said with little emotion. "It's completely over. The judge is gone. The gang is done. The spirit is practically dead." "But we can fix it," Maddog yelled. "There's nothing to fix. The corporation has control." "The corporation? You can't just leave, Mahone. We have a job to do, and we swore that it's over," Mahone yelled. "We lost. And I'm done." Maddog stared at his longtime friend. Sadness swept over him. He had never seen his friend like this, and it killed him inside. He knew Mahone was right, but he also knew he would be lost if his friend left. "What do people think?" Maddog asked. "That you quit? That you gave up?" "I don't care. They'll believe I disappeared like the judge or like Banks. I just don't care." "What about your parents?" "Tell them nothing, Maddog. You never saw me leave. Promise me that you'll tell them nothing." Maddog nodded. For once in his life, he had nothing to say. He looked at his friend and the pain in his eyes. "Fine. I won't tell them that you ran away, but the ancient ones will know, and it'll devastate them." Mahone said nothing. His eyes were locked on his friend's eyes. They both fought back tears. "I'm going to find the judge," Mahone said, "and I'll come back. Then, Maddog, I promise you that we will defeat them all, the corporation, the traitors, all of them. But I don't believe I can do it without the judge." "And they knew that," Maddog cut in. "Did you think about that, Mahone? But we can continue without the—" "No, Maddog. I'm leaving. I'll be back, but I have to leave." The wind beat against the two men as they were motionless. Finally, Mahone made his horse move forward. He rode right beside Maddog. "You'll be okay, Maddog," Mahone said with a little emotion. "Just do what you've always done. Take care of yourself." Maddog nodded. He knew it was useless to try to convince Mahone to stay. Mahone rode a little further, passing by the second Mad and nodding to him as he did. Then he turned around and yelled, "Maddog, you got to keep the spirit alive. You have to." Then he spurred his horse, and they disappeared into the darkness. Maddog sat motionless. He wasn't going to chase him. He also had no desire to head back to the lands. The second rider came up beside him. "Keep the spirit alive. Ha! Maddog said to the second rider. He removed his hat and ran his fingers through his hair. It's all over, Drake. He let out a big sigh. Never thought I would see the day, but it's all over. An older Maddog looked away from the sliver of a moon, shaking his head like he was trying to cast away the nightmare he was reliving. That was a painful night when his buddy and best friend left the lands and hasn't been seen since. His world collapsed that night. It had been haunting him lately. There wasn't much that distracted Maddog, but this particular event did, especially this night. It was the one memory that continued to haunt him. The lands have never been the same, eh, Eyeball? Maddog said as he patted the neck of his horse. I just can't believe it's been 7 years and no sight of him yet. That may be a good thing, since I didn't do much to keep the spirit alive. Eyeball let out a whinny as Maddog let out a fake laugh. Ha! The spirit! What did the spirit ever do for me? He shook his head as he ran his fingers through his hair. Mahone, where are you, Mama's boy? The two old men sat on the rooftop, behind them a giant glass dome. One of them sat smoking a cigar and staring up at the stars, the sliver of a moon allowing the stars to shine bright. The other staring at the hot tea in his cup. It was an uneasy night, with a slight breeze and a clear sky. Lights from the buildings in Orleans illuminated the rooftop, as well as the light from the glass dome behind them. Both men were alone in their thoughts, until the cigar-smoking old man spoke up. You sure you don't want to have a drink, Jess? He said while lifting a glass of whiskey. I'm sure, but thank you, Gary, Jess responded. Hot tea will do just fine for me tonight. Something on your mind? Gary asked, after taking a sip. Jess said nothing. He obviously had something on his mind. In fact, he had several things on his mind. It's not like you to not have yourself a cocktail at the end of the day, Gary said, swirling his glass of whiskey. And you're certainly not your talkative self tonight, so there must be something on your mind. There's always something on my mind, Jess Donner replied. Comes with the job. And the personality, Gary remarked, producing a half smile. It was a trademark look for Gary. His eyes would beam behind his thick glasses, and the right side of his mouth would go up and open slightly. I've known you forever. There hasn't been a time when you're not worrying about something. Okay, Jess Donner said in a sing-songy voice. It was his way of saying either he didn't like what you were saying or doing, or that he was getting annoyed. That's because it seems the survival of the lands is always my responsibility. Well, you are the custodian after all, Gary said, taking a puff from his cigar. To be honest, I don't know how the flug you've been doing it for so long. I would have quit a long time ago. We all have our jobs and the pressures that come with them. Not like your job, dealing with all the leaders of the lands and the ancient ones, trying to do everything you can to keep the spirit alive. You can have it. Gary took a swig of his drink, then a puff of his cigar. Jess took a sip of his hot tea. Pirates are quiet tonight, Gary said, trying to make small talk. Yes, they are, Jess softly replied. The governor is doing a great job. The governor. He's a joke. The comment made Jess smile. I've never understood why you don't like the governor, Gary. He's done a wonderful job here in Orleans. Come on, Jess. You know why? Gary stared at his friend, waiting for an answer, but there was none. It's because I don't like anyone. This brought a bigger smile to Jess Donner's face. Oh, that's right. How could I forget that? The two men chuckled. Jess took a sip of his hot tea while Gary took a swig of whiskey, then another puff of his cigar. He watched the smoke dance. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Then Gary started up. So, Jess, what if your grand plan doesn't work? he asked. "Have you thought about the possibility that the spirit could die completely?" Jess Donner said nothing. He simply took another sip of his hot tea. Jess was a serious and frail-looking old man. His thinning hair was combed neatly, and eyes were a bit bloodshot. It looked as though he hadn't slept in days. Gary took another puff on his cigar. His glasses were crooked on his face, and his face produced his lopsided smile. "I mean, what the flug will happen to the lands?" he said as he watched the smoke from his cigar dance on the slight breeze. "Okay, Gary. Language, please," Jess Donner said. Gary shook his head. "Jess, how long have we known each other? You can't tell me that my linguistics still bother you." "I just don't think it's necessary." "You and Master Fred," Gary said with a chuckle. "It used to bug the heck out of Master Fred. Man, I miss that guy. Never thought I would say that, but I do. And he's been gone forever." Gary took a sip of whiskey. "But right now I think you're using your disdain of my verbiage for an excuse not to answer my question." Jess Donner took another sip of his hot tea. "I would prefer not to think about it, honestly, Gary. There's no precedent for this. You're the archivist, you know that." "I know. There's never been anything like this. And how do we let it get to this flugging point? I mean, if I'm being honest, I never thought I would see the day when the spirit is all but gone from the lands. Well, how could we? We tried everything to keep the spirit alive." "Well, what are the ancient ones doing about it? I'm sure they can see the writing on the wall." "They are just as concerned as we are." Gary puffed on his cigar. His mind was racing, and he needed it to slow down. He closed his eyes and thought about it. The more he did, the sadder he got. "Yeah, I really thought the Gang of Five would save it. They did a great job. We just never thought they would disband. And we weren't ready for it." Gary took another puff of his cigar. "How did we not see that coming? Or even have a plan if it did? Man, we really failed there." "Well, we figured they would work things out. For decades, they figured it out on their own. They always did before, but we were wrong. With them gone, especially Mahone, I'm afraid the spirit had difficulty staying relevant." "Jess, we both know that the spirit was struggling even before they broke up." Gary looked at Jess Donner, who was nodding his head. "I think we just never thought the spirit would up and flug and die," Gary continued. "It's not dead, Gary," Jess responded, getting annoyed. He composed himself. "It's still alive in other parts of the land. It's just weak." "It's dying, Jess. You better start accepting it. Yeah, you can feel it. Besides, you can see the proof. It's all over the lands. I see the reports. I read your notes." Gary took a sip of whiskey as he looked up at the sliver of a moon. He continued as if he was reading from the many archives he had stored in his office. "The coral in the lagoon is basically white. There's no color to them at all. The buildings in Merchant Valley are showing signs of deterioration, falling apart. Most of the falls all around the lands are barely trickles, including the Splashing Red Rock's big fall. What else?" Gary looked around as if to try to recall more examples. I get it, Gary," Jess said. Oh, there's the water level in the river that's dropped. And the big white mountain looking more brown than white. And let's not forget about the spirit tree." There was silence between them. Then Jess Donner spoke up. I went to see the spirit tree recently. Not only is it dead, but the ground all around it is now dying. There's a ring of dirt all around it." Gary looked at his old friend. He could tell that Jess was pretty sad, but he felt the need to keep going. "And the biggest sign of all, the neutral lands. The neutral lands are completely barren. Remember back when it was flowing with lush green grass? We used to have such great celebrations out there. Now the lands do nothing together. Zippo! Their citizens care nothing about the spirit. They only care about themselves. There's no creativity, no camaraderie. The records show it. You can barely feel it anymore. Nobody cares. No one is fighting to keep the spirit alive. I am, Jess Donner said. You have to. You're the flugging custodian. You know, if the spirit dies, so do the lands. And if the lands die, well, then the corporation wins. Jess Donner took a sip of his hot tea, then looked up at the stars. That cannot happen, Jess said. Well, then you better just hope things turn around, and soon, Gary said, taking another puff from his cigar. Let's face it, there aren't too many of us left that can still feel the spirit, who actually understand it. There's more than you think, Gary, Jess Donner stated, taking another sip of his hot tea. Well, then they better start showing it. What are they waiting for, the spirit flugging funeral? Okay, Gary, please. Enough with the language, and stop with the doomsday talk. Jess remained calm, although Gary was getting on his nerves. Well, we can't count the spirit dead just yet. We have to be patient. Oh, how many times have I heard you say that we have to be patient? Gary remarked. And how many times have I been right? Gary smiled. It was true. His friend typically was right. He took a sip from his glass. His smile disappeared. But what if you're not this time, Jess? What if your last-ditch effort is just that, an effort? Spirit forbid, what if your grand plan doesn't work? The two men locked eyes. Jess sat back in his chair and finished the hot tea in his cup. Gary sat back and took another puff on his cigar. But Gary continued. Could it actually be lost? Everything we worked so hard to maintain? Could all my archives become writings of an existence that allowed itself to smolder out? Is it possible that someday soon we talk about the spirit in past tense? Jess answered. If the corporation has its way, the answer is yes. Gary took a sip of whiskey. And if it does, well, what happens to all of us? Jess looked up at the stars. I don't want to find out, Gary. I don't want to see that happen. And you know how it goes, Gary. Who typically gets his way? Gary laughed. Well, that would be you, almighty custodian. But you know it and I know it. Things are different. The lands are different. We keep pretending that it's not real, but it is. We've trusted the process and look where it got us. So my question is, Jess Donner, what the flug happens if the spirit dies? Jess took it all in. His friend had some legitimate concerns, but he couldn't let them cause him to lose focus. So he said the one thing he always said in these situations. I don't know. Maddog rode his horse up to River's Edge Terrace, which was all lit up. It was a beacon for the lost and lonely, especially on a cold, lonely night. People entered and exited the main entrance, laughing and conversing, and no one seemed to notice the man standing in the shadows of a huge willow tree, growing about 20 feet from the door. His reddish-brown hair was cut short, and his eyes were darting around constantly, taking in everything. Who was entering, who was exiting, who just arrived from the small keelboat, and who was just milling around. He was a serious man, dressed in a white shirt, red vest, dark brown pants, and a long, dirty, and tattered brown overcoat. His eyes rarely met others, but when they did, he would give a quick nod of hello, which was usually returned in the same way. No one felt threatened. In fact, no one even seemed to take any concern of his presence at all, almost like he wasn't there. And that was just fine for him. That was his job. As was the norm, River's Edge Terrace was alive, pounding on all cylinders. Even the port was welcoming a new group debarking from a small keelboat. Another small group here for a night of fun. Maddog jumped off his horse and composed himself. It was time to become the man everyone knew him as, instead of the man he was. He opened a satchel that was on the back of Eyeball, his horse, and pulled out a pack of cigarettes, which he put in his shirt pocket. He then pulled out a wallet, which he put in his back right pant pocket. He then pulled out a pocket watch. He opened the cover and studied its face. As he did, a little light came on. He smiled, closed the cover, then attached the pocket watch to his vest and hid it in his vest pocket. He closed the satchel, patted the back of his horse, then walked her over and wrapped her reins around a post. "Well, Eyeball, time to shake off these demons and win a little something," he said. He walked towards the entrance of River's Edge Terrace, but came to a stop by the giant willow tree that seemed to stand guard. A shiver went down Maddog's spine. "Somebody just walked over my grave," he said to nobody. The old phrase he used to say as a kid brought a smile to his face, which quickly disappeared. "Something happening tonight. I can feel it in my bones." He walked by the giant willow tree and gave it a little wink. Then he walked up the stairs to the porch that wrapped around River's Edge Terrace and headed towards the swinging doors. As he did, the doors flung open, and a group of 5 drunk young men came stumbling out, laughing and pushing each other. They ran right into Maddog. "Hey, watch it, old man," one of them said. "Yow!" Maddog exclaimed. "Get out of the way," yelled another, pushing Maddog to the side. Out of nowhere, the tall, serious man wearing the dirty, long, tattered overcoat grabbed the young man and threw him against the wall. He lifted him up by his shirt, threw him again against the wall, then pressed his hand against his neck. "What are you doing?" the young man squealed. There was no answer. The tall man in the dirty, long, tattered overcoat said nothing. Drake wants you to apologize to me," Maddog said as he composed himself. "Hey, let go of him!" yelled another young man, approaching Drake from behind. Drake didn't even turn around and look at him. He just continued to stare at the young man he held against the wall. When the approaching young man got close enough, Drake kicked backwards, hitting the approaching young man right in the chest, knocking him down to the ground. I really suggest you apologize before Drake makes you all look like a bunch of mama's boys. And trust me, he will," Maddog said. Drake didn't move. He stared at the young man he held against the wall, the intense stare from his eyes just as scary as the hand on the young man's neck. Okay, I'm sorry," the young man being held against the wall yelled. Drake threw him against the wall again. Maddog took in a deep breath and let it out very dramatically. He wants you to say it like you mean it," Maddog explained. "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for pushing you," the young man said, holding back tears. Drake released his grip and threw the young man towards his friends. "Hey, forget that. We can take him on," said one of the other young men, stepping forward and motioning to the others to do the same. Drake turned around and dusted off his long, dirty, tattered overcoat. He then put his hands on his hips and stared at them. He made it a point to look at each one of the young men. He then brought his right hand up and motioned for them to come get him. The young men just stood there. Not sure if you know this," Maddog said, "but that's the universal sign for come and give it a try." The young men just stood there. A couple of them backed away, not able to look Drake in the eyes. "Well," Maddog continued, "apology accepted. Why don't you goofs move along and make your mamas proud somewhere else? Because if you don't mind, I have me some money to win. Drake!" Drake took an exaggerated step towards the young men, which caused them to scatter. Maddog stood next to Drake and smiled. "Well, they never learn. You just shouldn't mess with the great Maddog, eh, Drake?" Drake looked at his friend and smiled. Maddog then looked around. Something was bothering him tonight, and it wasn't just the memory of Mahone. "Something is happening tonight," he said. "I can feel it in my bones." He looked around one more time, then he smacked Drake on the back. "Nicely done, old friend," he exclaimed. Maddog turned and took another deep breath and said, "Get ready, River's Edge Terrace, because here comes Maddog." Drake watched as Maddog entered River's Edge Terrace. He then went back and stood under the big willow tree. He felt it too. Something was in the air, but neither he nor Maddog could tell if it was something good or bad. Maddog walked through the swinging doors and entered River's Edge Terrace. His face, which only moments ago looked old and tortured, was now showing a huge smile. He breathed in another deep breath as he took it all in. River's Edge Terrace was a huge, beautiful, yet a little confusing, 3-story establishment of fun. As it expanded over time, it was influenced by many styles. The first thing you saw upon entering it was the restaurant, which was situated right in front of you. The influence of Orleans bled through all its decorations and style. Color was splashed everywhere. Just walking into it put a smile on your face and made you want to party. To the left of the main entrance was the casino and the small cafe, which was the oldest part of River's Edge Terrace and resembled the Horseshoe from the Western Territories. Rustic and cluttered, but clean, it sang of clanking slot machines, happy diners, and conversing card players. To the right of the main entrance was a walkway that led to the port, where travelers bought their tickets for river transportation, stored luggage, or were received into Orleans. Its style contradicted that of the restaurant. It was dark, dingy, and daunting. There were trees growing right in the middle of the building, large willows whose branches hung low. There was an adventurous feel to the port, almost like it was preparing you for what may lie ahead. Now through the restaurant and up a stairway took you to the dance club. This was the place to be for a good time. Alive with music and color, there were no bad times there. The music was rich with horns and drums and singing, sometimes by a singer, but most of the time by everyone there. It was the home to singing, dancing, drinking, and laughing. The perfect place to be when trying to forget all your worries and troubles. That's why the name of the dance club was perfect. It was called the Facade. River's Edge Terrace, like most buildings in Orleans, had a balcony, or terrace, which was accessible from all parts of the building. Even though it wasn't as splashy as the restaurant or the Facade, or as fun as the casino, it was the most popular place. From the terrace you could overlook the town and the river. During the day you could watch people go about their business, sit out there and enjoy the day with food and drink. At dusk, you could lose yourself in the sunset that reflected on the river, the orange-red colors floating on the water, almost like it was pointing right towards River's Edge Terrace. There were those who considered it the most beautiful place to be at dusk in all the lands. At night, from the terrace, Orleans came to life. It was like looking down upon the stars. On this particular night, you could see the stars in the sky just as clear as you could see the lights on the buildings of Orleans. Maddog took it all in. He was lost in the sights and sounds when a young lady approached him. "Good evening, Mr. Maddog," she said in a sweet voice. "Well, hello there," Maddog said, smiling. "I've been sent to inform you that there is a seat all ready for you at one of our poker tables." "Well, that sounds fantastic. Lead the way, my dear." Maddog motioned towards the casino. The young lady smiled at him, then turned and headed towards the casino entrance. Maddog smiled and looked around River's Edge Terrace one more time. "Man, I love this place." The old man stood on a rock ledge way up high on a mountain peak. He took in another breath, and a look of concern came over his dark, tanned face. He had the look of a man who had spent most of his life in the sun. Although he was old, he had no wrinkles, and his hair was peppered with just a little gray. He pulled the thick blanket tighter around him as he surveyed the lands. Something wasn't right. From where he stood, he could see most of the lands, even though they were far off in the distance and it was dark. The sliver of a moon did very little to help him see anything. He could barely see the glow of the lights from TechLand and the Kingdom, which were the lands furthest away. Orleans was a bit closer, so he could see the outline of some of the buildings which were lit up. Those buildings obscured his view of anything from Merchant Valley. As for the jungle, he could never see it during the night. That land was hidden and mysterious. Even during the day, all you could see were its trees. Of course, that didn't matter to the old man, for the jungle was a land he knew very well. During the day, however, from where he stood, he had a fantastic view of the lands. It was one of the reasons he retreated to this part of the very outskirts of the lands. Splashing red rock sat where the River of Wonder split off, one branch to the tribe, the other lost into the outer neutral lands. He was hidden, and that's how he liked it, and so many of the citizens of the lands liked it too. He enjoyed sitting in his old wooden chair on the ledge, staring out to the lands during the day. They looked beautiful and peaceful. But tonight was not a peaceful night. There was a strange breeze, and it bothered him. For some strange reason, he felt the spirit was slipping away, and that was a feeling he didn't like. "I just don't know what is happening, Sheba," he said in a strange dialect to the old wolf laying at his feet. She raised her head and looked at him, waiting for him to explain. "Feels like the spirit is slowly fading away, or something is killing it. Either way, I don't like it. It seems to be getting worse every day." Sheba looked out over the lands and yawned. She laid her head down on her large paws. The old man took another deep breath through his nose, but he made a look that showed he was disappointed. "It's like the spirit is disappearing, Sheba," the old man said, sounding like he was about to cry. Sheba looked up at him and let out a little whine. "I don't know why. It just is." He took another step closer to the edge. He looked to his right, like maybe the answer was in Orleans. Then he tried to look out further. Maybe the answer lay in TechLand or the kingdom. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and nothing. He looked down to his left, took a deep breath through his nose, and smiled. "Spirit's still alive in the tribe," he said with a little smile. "But it's weak. I don't like it. This is not good." Sheba let out a little howl. "What does that mean?" the old man said to the old wolf. Sheba let out a little howl again. "Yes, someone should do something. If there is no spirit, there is no lands." The old man closed his eyes and took in one more deep breath. Nothing. "Someone has to do something." He looked down at Sheba. She nodded, then raised an eyebrow. "Me? Oh, no. I done enough damage. I'm sure nobody wants me to ever interfere again." Sheba let out a little whine. "Where are the ancient ones? They should be doing something." He wrapped a thick blanket even tighter round him and plopped down in the old wooden chair. Sheba got up, moved herself next to the chair, and laid down. The old man scratched the top of her head. "I knew it was bad when the gang broke up. No one left to keep the spirit alive." Sheba let out a little howl. The old man looked out at the lands again, so beautiful, even in the darkness of night. He looked up to the dark sky, feeling helpless on that mountain peak on the far outskirts of the lands. On the complete opposite end of the lands, in an area known as TechLand, the massive contraption was all lit up. It rested high up on the third story of a simple, multi-level structure. Right below it was the loading platform for the transportation system known as the Mover. The huge monstrosity looked like a giant spider resting on its back. It had 10 arms that each had an antenna dish at the end. In the center of it, high above the arms, was what looked like a huge cannon pointed upwards to the heavens. Across from the massive weapon was its control room. The walls of the control room were lined with gauges and switches and levers and blinking lights. They were tables with papers and files strewn all over them. Standing next to a desk that had a monitor and a keyboard on it was an older man and a younger lady, both wearing lab coats. Behind them was another young lady, staring at paperwork and matching what was written on the paperwork to the displays on the monitors in front of her. They all looked exhausted. It was obvious they just wanted the two people who were standing at the large window looking out to the giant contraption to leave. Those two people were Director Jacalian, Director of TechLand, and Commander Kerr, who, as the Commander of Protective Services of TechLand, was dressed in a military uniform. Director Jacalian stood at the window, staring in awe at what he considered a thing of beauty. "Isn't it beautiful, Commander Kerr?" Director Jacalian asked. She didn't answer. The Orbitron is going to make TechLand the most feared land for sure, he said as he took a big puff on his cigar. He turned and walked towards the two people in the white lab coats. So, Professor, when exactly is that baby going to be ready to go, Chief? Director Jacalian asked. The professor was thin and tall, with thinning red hair. He removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He held his glasses high and peered at them like they were going to show him the answer. He then put his glasses back on his face and turned to his assistant standing next to him. Dr. Stacy? The professor asked his assistant. She looked at him and shrugged her shoulders. Carla? The professor asked, turning to the young lady behind him. Haven't we answered that question 100 times already? She said to him. He smiled and nodded to her, then looked at the director. As we have said already, Director Jacalian, we are having some issues. I can't give you an exact date. Director Jacalian did not like that answer. Come on, tough guy. You have to get that baby up and going, Director Jacalian responded. I cannot wait to show the rest of the lands the power we possess here in TechLand. Director Jacalian took another puff of his cigar. Man, I just love that name. TechLand. So much better than Land of Technology, wouldn't you agree? Director Jacalian waited for some approval. Dr. Stacy just looked to the floor. Carla ignored him completely. The professor just looked at him and sighed. He really just wanted Director Jacalian and Commander Kerr to leave. Commander Kerr finally spoke up. I believe it was a good change you made, sir, she said. Darn right it was. Land of Technology. That sounded too showy. TechLand sounds mean and dangerous and intimidating. That's how I like it. And that's how the chairman likes it. Now just add the Orbitron and the Corporation of TechLand will dominate the lands, and no one will stop us. Director Jacalian approached the professor. All the armies and all the guards and all the sheriffs and all the custodians and ancient ones, or even the Gang of Five if they were still around, they couldn't stop us, Professor? We will be victorious. You forgot about the spirit, the professor said dryly. Oh, the spirit. Yeah, okay, Chief. I think you and Crazy Agent Clayton are the last two who still believe in the spirit. It's pretty much dead, just like anyone who dare challenge us once that baby gets working. Director Jacalian took a puff from his cigar and stared out at the Orbitron. We will rule the lands, he said quietly. Commander Kerr just stood there staring at the professor and Dr. Stacy. She could tell that they were either tired or anxious to get back to work. Professor, Dr. Stacy, are we keeping you from important business? She asked them with a smile. Dr. Stacy looked to the professor, then to Commander Kerr. To be honest, she said, I'm ready to call it a night. Make that two of us, Carla piped in. Go ahead and go, you two, Professor said, a look of disappointment on his face. I really would like to get back to my calculations and see if I can't figure out what's wrong. Director Jacalian turned around. You're the smartest person in all the lands, Professor. I'm sure you'll figure it out, tough guy. When he's not being distracted, he can, Carla muttered. Director Jacalian, believe me when I say I want to get this thing working. I'm looking forward to the day when I'm reunited with Shelley. With who? Director Jacalian asked, puffing on his cigar. Shelley, the professor said. My wife? Director Jacalian looked at Commander Kerr with a questioning look. His wife, Commander Kerr emphasized. The professor looked at the two of them with concern. But then Director Jacalian shook his head quickly, like he just realized something. Oh, his wife. Your wife, Shelley. Yes. Your wife, yes. She is still alive, right? The professor asked. He didn't like the way Director Jacalian answered. It made his heart drop. Of course, Director Jacalian answered nervously. She will be here to celebrate the first use of the Orbitron. Don't you worry none, tough guy. Commander Kerr could tell by the look on the professor's face that he was worried. You'll see her again, Commander Kerr said calmly. Get the Orbitron working, and the chairman will reward you more than you know. What she said, Director Jacalian said, pointing at Commander Kerr. Now let's run and let the professor do his magic. Director Jacalian smiled and patted the professor on the back as he and Commander Kerr headed towards the door. The professor gave a nod to Dr. Stacy and Carla. Carla dramatically dropped the paperwork. She wiped her hands clean and followed the director and Commander Kerr. "You'll let me know if you need any help," Dr. Stacy said to the professor. "Sure thing," he said, with a smile and a nod. "Don't stay up too late," Dr. Stacy said, wagging her finger at him. The professor laughed. "Roger that," he said. Dr. Stacy shook her head. She knew he would stay up as long as it took to figure it out, or just collapse in exhaustion. "Hey, Chief," Director Jacalian yelled out as Commander Kerr opened the door for him. "I look forward to seeing your creation do its thing. You the man." The professor smiled. That was a phrase he had heard so many times in the past. But the past is the past. He knew it was time to march forward, but he was afraid that now he was going to have to do it without his wife. He looked out the window at his creation. He was very proud of what he had done. He knew he was the only one that could have created it. After Commander Kerr shut the door behind her, Dr. Stacy approached Director Jacalian as they walked down a brightly lit hallway. Guards stood at attention as Director Jacalian walked by them. Dr. Stacy came up beside the director. "Something is not right here, Director Jacalian," she said to him. "I feel like the professor is stonewalling us." "I don't think it will ever work," Carla chimed in. Don't be silly, Chief," Director Jacalian said to Dr. Stacy. "He is just as excited about getting that thing going as I am. You worry too much." The director put the cigar in his mouth. "And if he is up to something, I'll take care of it." Back in the control room, the professor looked around the room and gave out a big sigh. He was all alone. "I'm sorry, Director Jacalian, but you are wrong. The Gang of Five could have stopped you. But with them gone, the big question is, who will save the lands?" Maddog followed the young woman into the casino and to a poker table just to the right of the casino entrance. The young woman motioned to a chair that was at the far end of the table, which was perfect for Maddog because it allowed him to be able to see the entrance of the casino and the entrance to River's Edge Terrace. "Perfect," Maddog said to the young woman, producing a big smile. He then looked at who else was sitting at the table. His smile disappeared. "Whoa! Is there a table that doesn't have so many of the scariest-looking characters in the lands?" Maddog said to her, for all to hear. The others at the table laughed. "Would you like to wait and sit elsewhere?" she asked, a little confused. "Yes," a man named Sal said. "Send him to another table so he can annoy them and take their money instead of ours." Once again, everyone at the table laughed. "I get no respect," Maddog said to the young woman as he sat down. I guess I'll stay here." "Lucky us," the lady sitting to Maddog's right said. Her voice was deep and raspy, like she'd spent most of the time yelling or smoking. "Now we get to put up with your shenanigans." You love it and you know it, Sarge," Maddog said to her. Maddog looked around the table and was happy to see that he knew everyone there. To his left was old Doc Moran, the long-time doctor in the lands. Next to him was Sal, who was the witch doctor in the jungle. Next to him was Catman, owner of River's Edge Terrace, along with many other restaurants around the lands. Rounding out the table were Big O, the manager of the Horseshoe in Western Territories, and Lady Fuller, who was head server at the Horseshoe. As chips were delivered to Maddog, he leaned over to Doc Moran and said, "Isn't it way past your bedtime, Doc?" Doc Moran let out a few short bursts of laughter. "I'll know it's my bedtime when I'm out of money." He spoke like he was almost always out of breath, with a thick brogue. "Now that you've shown up, it will most likely be bedtime soon." "You still playing doctor?" Maddog asked. Doc Moran chuckled again. It was a question Maddog asked him for decades, and he still found it funny. "No, Doc Peters is now playing doctor." "What? You've called it quits?" "It's called semi-retirement," Doc Moran answered, putting his hands in the air. "Well, what the heck does that mean?" Maddog asked. "I do less work and get paid the same," Doc Moran answered with a couple of chuckles. Sounds like my type of work, Maddog said. Maddog, your type of work is to do nothing and get paid, Big O said. Everyone laughed. Ha ha, mama's boy. Are we here to make fun of me or play poker? Maddog exclaimed. Deal 'em up, he yelled. The two old men walked down the dark alleyway of Orleans. Jess Donner hunched over with his briefcase in his hand, Gary walking while puffing his cigar. Jess, I'm sorry I was such a downer earlier, Gary said. Well, I'm used to it, Jess responded with a smile. I want you to know I fully support you in whatever you do. I know that, Gary. We've known each other for a long time, my friend, Gary continued. Never in my wildest dream did I think it would get to this. And you have some wild dreams, Jess Donner said, bringing that half-smile to Gary's face. There's a part of me that feels I should have done more, Gary responded. I've known what's been going on. Maybe part of me just didn't want to believe it would get to this. Maybe part of me knew it would. And maybe part of me wanted it to. He took a puff of his cigar. I lived with the records and the history and the life of the lands and the spirits for so long. It's possible a part of me wanted it to end. But now that it may be upon us, I regret feeling that way. He took another puff of his cigar. I should have stepped in sooner and did something. We should have stepped in and did something, Jess said. Gary, we can't change what we did and did not do in the past, but we can do what we can do now to keep the spirit alive. We need to do what we can do to keep the spirit alive. Gary stopped and looked up at the stars. I suppose if the spirit does die, we would finally find out once and for all the answer to one of the longest argued questions. Do the abilities given to us by the spirit require the spirit to be used, or is it our own inner strength that gives them power? Gary smiled at Jess Donner. Jess just shook his head and laughed and responded, Yes, we used to have some very intense philosophical discussions revolving abilities, didn't we? Jess smiled as he thought back to the good old days. You and Master Fred going at it, the judge just laughing at the both of you. Even Merle would get into it. Jess lost his smile. I miss those days, Gary. And to be honest, I hope we never find out who was right. The spirit cannot die. Gary's smile faded. I'm not sure there's much I can do to help you, Jess. I believe you are in this fight alone. Okay, no use feeling sorry for yourself, Gary. I believe you are just as much a part of this struggle as I am. The situation will present itself when you will contribute to keeping the spirit alive. For all we know, your archive may be the last refuge of the spirit. Jess looked down to the ground. It saddens me to think that you could be responsible for keeping the memory of the spirit alive. Oh, well, if that's the case, it's good as dead, then. The two men laughed. Then the laughter subsided and the reality set back in. Like I said, Jess Donner, you let me know what I can do to help. But please, don't let anybody else know that I flugging care. Okay, your secret is safe with me. The two men smiled and nodded to each other. Then Jess Donner turned and walked down the dark Orleans alleyway alone. Gary watched him leave. Then a feeling of hope came upon him. If Jess felt there was still a chance, maybe he should feel the same way and do something about it. Maybe I should hit the books, he said to himself. Maybe I can find something to explain just what the flug is going on. The mood at the table was light. A few hands into it, Maddog already had a big stack of chips in front of him. You are one lucky guy, Sal said to Maddog as he threw his cards in. Me? I'm a lucky guy, Maddog responded. How about you? How are things over in the jungle? You still controlling the masses? Sal shook his head. Things are just the way you left them. They're good. Yeah, and remember who created that little nest egg for you, Maddog said. Was it Mahone? Catman answered. Everyone, except Maddog, laughed. You all like laughing at my expense, don't you? Well, that's why I don't feel bad about taking your money. Maddog shook his head, even though he really wasn't hurt by anything they said. He looked towards Sal. Shaman still causing you problems? Not really, Sal answered. He was a quiet, soft-spoken man, nothing like the persona he played in front of the natives of the jungle. As the witch doctor, he could be very, very dramatic and charismatic. Right now, he was very subdued. We haven't seen hide or hair of him in quite a while. He's still alive? Maddog asked. Haven't heard anything otherwise, Sal answered. Have you heard anything from Mahone? Sarge asked. Maddog didn't say a thing. He looked at the cards dealt to him. Sorry, Sarge said. I should know it's a sore subject. How is it sore? Big O asked. He hasn't worked a day since the gang broke up. You only wish you could stop working, Big O, Maddog snapped. Are you still Gonzo's servant? Maddog, Lady Fuller said, giving him a stern look. Don't get started. I'm still managing the Horseshoe, and I love it. I get to work with wonderful people like yours truly, Big O said, motioning towards Lady Fuller. Besides, Lily is coming to the Horseshoe. That'll be fun. She'll be at the club in a couple of days, Catman said. She'll be in the jungle soon as well, Sal said with a big smile. Lily, Maddog muttered. Would be good to see her in the band again. Maddog threw some chips into the pot. How about your wife, Catman? She still singing at your restaurant in TechLand? Catman looked down at his cards. Nope. What? Why not? TechLand took it away from us. Maddog did an exaggerated shake of his head. What's that you say? They closed Erica's Carousel restaurant? No, they didn't close it. It's still open. They send us money, but we don't run it. They won't let us in. Well, that's just wrong. The best thing about that place was hearing Erica sing, Maddog said, still in disbelief that TechLand had taken it. It definitely wasn't the food, am I right? He asked the others at the table, most of which just shook their head. No, Erica sings only in our memories, Doc Moran said. That's right. They stopped Erica from singing, Catman responded. But did they stop Lily? Of course not. She's allowed to sing in TechLand. Well, let's not forget who Lily's daddy is, Sal whispered to Catman. TechLand, Maddog commented. Someone needs to give the director a good kick in the butt. The others at the table looked at each other. We were kind of hoping you would do that, Sal said. Me? Didn't you hear? I'm semi-retired. You mean fully retired, Lady Fuller said with a smile. Or lazy, Catman added. Maddog gave Catman a look, then looked over to Lady Fuller. Lady Fuller, when you going to get out of that dive called the Horseshoe? You and Big O could be doing so much better elsewhere, Maddog said. I agree, chimed in Catman. I would hire both of you in a heartbeat. I would even let you pick which land you would like to work in. As long as it wasn't TechLand, Maddog chimed in. Big O looked down at the cards he was dealt. I wish you'd sold the Horseshoe to me instead of Gonzo, Catman said to Big O. I don't know why you turned down my offer. Big O stared at his cards, then turned to Catman. Trust me, I really considered it, but Gonzo probably should have had it before me anyways. Lady Fuller touched Big O's left arm. I believe if his father had wanted him to have it, Lady Fuller said, he would have given it to him. He knew you would be a better owner. Well, Gonzo has it now, Big O replied, and he paid me well for it. He looked around the table. I love the Horseshoe, but who knows? Maybe I'll take you up on that job offer someday, Catman. Gonzo is so tough to work for. Everyone nodded in agreement. Big O tossed his cards in. He's obsessed with you, Maddog, Lady Fuller said. He's not too crazy about what you did. She called Maddog's bet. I did nothing, Maddog said. Whatever the rumors are out there, they are not true. Then why don't you talk to him and clear it up? Lady Fuller asked. Maddog just smiled. Sarge answered Lady Fuller's question. Because he knows that it's driving Gonzo crazy, she said. Ain't that right, Maddog? Sarge gave him a wink and a big smile, which Maddog returned. Sarge raised the bet, which Maddog called. It's called envy, Doc Moran said as he threw his cards in. For all that Gonzo has, he always wanted what you had, he said, looking at Maddog. You had the respect of others. You were surrounded by their friends who were also your workmates. He produced a big smile and chuckled. You are liked, and he is not. It's his envy of you. That's why he's obsessed with you. I always thought his obsession was with money, Maddog commented. It is, everyone at the table replied. Money and you, Doc Moran said, staring at Maddog. Gonzo was a big guy, both in size and stature. Not so much tall as he was wide. Even his head was large. He sat behind his desk, watching the crystal on top of his cane sparkle as he spun the cane around. It was something he liked to do when he was thinking. In front of him stood a tall man, Mr. Matthews. Mr. Matthews was adjusting his coat, readying himself to leave as soon as his meeting with Gonzo was done. To Gonzo's left sat Grimmer, a young gunslinger and Gonzo's enforcer, sitting in his usual chair by the window. Gonzo, Mr. Matthews said as he put his hat on, it's all right there. Your revenue would increase substantially if you make the members of the tribe sell their items in your shops. You can either take a percentage of the sales or charge them for the convenience. Either way, you make money. Chale, what's your big hurry, Matthews? Gonzo replied angrily. I want to make sure I understand this. It's late, Gonzo. I want to get home to my family, Mr. Matthews answered as he adjusted his coat. He was a big guy, and the suit he wore was a bit small, so it made him look even bigger. Family? Ha! You a family man? I never figured it, Gonzo replied. He pointed to Grimmer with his cane. That used to be you, remember? Carefree and feared. Mr. Matthews nodded and let out a sigh. Well, I'm not that anymore. Grimmer there can have it. And he does a better job than you ever did, Gonzo said, knowing it would get under Mr. Matthews' skin. I'm not that way anymore, Gonzo. Grimmer can have it, Mr. Matthews said calmly, even though deep down he wanted to punch Gonzo right in his fat face. He knew what Gonzo was doing, but he really did just want to get home to his family. Gonzo was the boss, but his family was number one. All you have to do is decide which is it going to be, either a percentage or a fee. Then have the sheriff create a law banning the tribe from selling their stuff in town. I'll write up a contract tomorrow, and you'll have to have Chief Isaac sign it. It's that simple. Which should I take, the percentage or the fee? Mr. Matthews thought for a moment. A fee would be easiest. You wouldn't have to track sales. You may make a little less, but it would definitely be easier. I don't like the idea of making less money, Gonzo yelled as he slammed his cane on the floor. Then make it a percentage, Mr. Matthews replied calmly, not affected by the outburst. He was too used to them and actually expected it. You just need to make a choice and let me know tomorrow. With that, I will take my leave. I'm not done with you, Matthews, Gonzo yelled. Spirit be with you, Mr. Matthews said as he saluted Gonzo. He looked over to Grimmer, who was sitting in his chair, staring at Mr. Matthews. The two just stared at each other. Mr. Matthews didn't like the little punk who took over for him as Gonzo's enforcer, and he was pretty sure Grimmer didn't like him either. Their stare lasted a bit longer. Then Mr. Matthews turned to leave. Be here early tomorrow, Matthews, Gonzo yelled. Mr. Matthews threw his hands in the air in acknowledgement and left Gonzo's office. I don't know how that guy got so smart when it comes to finances, Gonzo said as he watched Mr. Matthews leave. "He was a goon like you for so long. Now look at him. A brute in a monkey suit, trying to look all businesslike. I miss the old Matthews. And what's with the spirit be with you crap he's been saying? It sounds stupid." Grimmer didn't say a word. He just sat there staring out the window. "I'm going to need you to round up the lazy, good-for-nothing Sheriff Bob. I want this new ordinance out tomorrow morning." Grimmer stood up and adjusted his holster. "Sure thing, boss," Grimmer said. He was a slender young man with a boyish face and a soft voice. He always had a slight smile on his face that was accented by his dimples. "Grimmer, you look like a little boy playing cowboy. How is it that you are the most feared guy in the Western Territories?" Grimmer shot Gonzo a smile and raised his eyebrows. "Don't know, boss," he said softly. "Luck, I suppose." He walked towards the door. "I have a feeling Sheriff Bob isn't in his office, so this might take a bit." "Just get him here, Grimmer," Gonzo yelled. "Sure thing, boss," Grimmer said. He adjusted his holster again and left Gonzo's office. Just as Grimmer shut the door behind him, Gonzo reached under his desk and flipped a switch which secured the door. He shook his head as he remembered that one of the guys responsible for his security system was someone he was now after. Maddog, when I get my hands on you. He leaned back in his chair, then started spinning his cane, staring at the crystal. "Chale, a fee or a percentage? How can I get the most from you and your tribe, Chief Isaacs?" Drake was standing with his back against a willow tree and keeping track of who was exiting and entering the River's Edge Terrace. He knew he needed to stay vigilant, especially with this uneasy feeling he had. He could sense that something was happening, but just couldn't put his finger on it. He looked around, then reached around his back to where he had his large knife holstered. He slowly removed it and stabbed it into the willow tree's trunk just above his head. He could sense what was about to happen, and his senses didn't fail him. Drake slowly moved to his right and around to the other side of the willow tree, keeping his right hand on the knife. Standing there on the walkway were the group of guys who had bumped into Maddog earlier. They were holding clubs and knives. The head guy was hitting his hand with his club, trying to be tough. "Hey, jerk, remember us?" Drake just stood there. It appeared to them that he was just resting against a tree, his right hand out of view. Drake concentrated on the club going up and down, from palm to forehead, up and down. "Did you think we were just going to let you and the old man push us around?" he asked. Drake said nothing. He just watched the club go up and down, palm to forehead. The guy looked around at his buddies. "Seems to me like we have him so scared he can't even talk." His buddies laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. "I think it's time we teach you a lesson," the guy said. But before he could even move, Drake removed the knife from the willow tree's trunk and threw it right at the guy's head. The knife stuck into the club just as it reached his forehead. The guy screamed. In an instant, Drake lunged at him and pushed the club into the guy's forehead. He fell to the ground, but Drake kept the club. One of the buddies moved towards Drake like he was going to stab it, but Drake swung the club and whacked him right in the stomach. The buddy fell to the ground. Then, holding on to the knife that was stuck in the club, he flung the club to hit another one of the buddies right in the head. Drake tossed the knife in the air, caught it by its point, and turned to another buddy and acted like he was going to throw it right at his head. "Oh, please don't kill me!" he screamed as he dropped his knife. Drake turned to another of the buddies and he dropped his club. Drake motioned with his head, and all the buddies who were standing took off running, just leaving the two guys who were lying on the ground, moaning. Drake stood over them, shaking his head. He put his left hand in the air, showing them his 5 fingers. He slowly put one down, showing only 4 fingers. Then he slowly put another one down, showing only 3 fingers. The two guys stared at each other and screamed. As Drake put down another finger, they jumped up, still in pain, and took off running. He used the 2 fingers that remained to give them a sarcastic salute goodbye. As they disappeared from sight, Drake returned his knife to its resting place. He picked up the club that was on the ground and examined it. It was a nice piece of wood. He figured he would hold on to it, just in case they came back. He turned and returned to his post in the shadows of the willow tree. Maddog threw in his cards, frustrated at losing the hand. "Yahoo," he muttered. He had been bluffing, and Lady Fuller called his bluff. She gave Maddog a wink as she collected her winnings. "Hurts to lose, doesn't it, Maddog?" Lady Fuller said as she gave him a wink and a smile. "Ah, not so painful losing to a lovely lady," Maddog said with a smile, even though he was upset about losing. "Now, if I'd lost to Big O, I'd be furious." "Why would you be furious if you lost to me?" Big O asked. "Because you're a terrible player," Maddog shot back. Lady Fuller laughed. "We certainly miss you at the Horseshoe. You and all the gang." "No, we don't," Big O mumbled. As the dealer began dealing cards for the next game, Sal spoke up. "You know, Maddog, I have to ask, what happened to the gang?" "Come on, Sal," Maddog responded. "Are you writing a book? If so, leave this chapter out." "No, I'm not writing a book. I think it's a question everybody has." The others at the table nodded as they looked at their cards. "I know it's been a topic of conversation many a time at the Horseshoe." "I raise," Big O said, throwing in a small bet. "People are curious. It seems so sudden." "Things happen," Maddog responded. Lady Fuller looked at her cards and responded. "I call. Maddog, you have to understand, it was just so sudden. One day the gang is there, the next day they're not. It was tough on all of us." "It's tough work, dealing with the Lands," Sarge said as she tossed in her cards. "I'm surprised they lasted as long as they did." "Not sure why you're all getting upset about this," Maddog mumbled. "Things happen. Now, I have a question for all of you. Are you feeling lucky?" Maddog threw out a large bet. "If you want to know the answer, you're gonna have to pay." Doc Moran laughed and shook his head as he tossed in his cards. "They're upset because they feel you have abandoned us," Doc Moran said. He closed his eyes and took some shallow breaths. "We had gotten used to you and your friends, taking care of us, solving our problems, keeping the spirit alive. We were all surprised because you all looked like such good friends. You accomplished so much and worked so well and inspired so many. You taught us to trust the process." Doc Moran smiled at Maddog. "And you did it all as friends." "Wow," Maddog exclaimed sarcastically. "That's a lot, especially since all my friends abandoned me." "Some of us do feel that you abandoned us," Sal said as he looked at his cards. "We expected more from you, Maddog," he said as he threw his cards in. "Really, Sal?" Catman responded as he played with his chips. "Did we think the gang was going to hang around forever to take care of our problems? That's what we have the Neutral Lands Army for." This caused Maddog to burst out laughing. "Okay. The Neutral Lands Army. Oh, okay. They're the biggest joke in all the lands." He turned to Sarge. No disrespect." "Very hurtful," Sarge replied. "Is the big goof Captain Hobogon still running things there?" Maddog asked Sarge. "Yes, he is still my boss," Sarge responded. "Man, Sarge, I don't know how you put up with him." Sarge said nothing. "The captain is nothing more than a mama's boy, pretending he's something he isn't. He and the Neutral Land armies would have no clue what to do if any sort of real threat happened." "No offense, Sarge." "Very offensive," Sarge said in reply. "The Neutral Lands Army. Neutral Lands Army is about as useful as a lawnmower in the Neutral Lands." "Very mean," Sarge said. Maddog continued. "They're about as useful as a snowball to fight a fire-breathing dragon." sliver of a moon did very little to help Peter, Ava, and Mitch, 3 soldiers of the Neutral Lands Army, who rode close together in the darkness, trying to stay warm in the barren Neutral Lands. The only light came from the enclosed torches that were hanging on poles that were attached to the back of their horses, and all they really did was show the barren surroundings immediately around them. The Neutral Lands was nothing but dirt, and the soldiers were charged to protect it. "Man, it's so stinking cold," Mitch, the soldier in the middle, said to his 2 partners. "Is it always this cold?" "During the night?" "Yep," answered Ava, the soldier to Mitch's left and the only female in the group. "You better get used to this, newbie," Peter, the soldier to his right, responded. "This will be your life for a while. You'll probably be patrolling the Neutral Lands at night for a long time." "It's still better than sitting in a house," said Ava. "Oh, heck yeah," Peter replied. "Give me my horse in the Neutral Lands any day over a house." "Yep. Captain must like you, newbie, since he started you out here." "You start in a house, Peter?" Ava asked. "Oh, yeah," Peter responded. "Hated every moment. How about you, Ava?" "Yep." "Yeah, looks like the captain has big plans for you, newbie," Peter continued. "Starting you out here, unlike Ava and I." "Yep, we had to put our time in a house." "A house with no mouse," Ava said, which made Peter laugh. The new young soldier just looked at his 2 trainers as they laughed at some inside joke. He then looked across the barren, dark land. "So, we just ride around in the darkness all night?" the new young soldier asked. "Yep," Ava answered. "Well, since we're currently at security status ticket D, we do 10 minutes in Hubland by the statue, then 30 minutes out and about on a run," Peter said. "We're not typically at status D," Peter said, looking over at Ava. She just looked at him and nodded. "Security status D is pretty high, isn't it?" Mitch asked. "If you remember your studies from the training manual, it's the 2nd from the highest." "Status E is the most severe, right?" Mitch asked his trainers. "Yep," Ava answered. We rarely ever have that," Peter continued. "In fact, we haven't seen it since the early days of the gang's breakup. Heck, we rarely even see status D. It's usually either A or B. However, it's security status D right now, so we do the runs we are told to do. That's what we do as soldiers of the NLA." The new young soldier gave Peter a strange look. "NLA?" he asked. "Come on, newbie," Peter responded, a little disappointed. "You can figure that out, can't you?" Mitch thought for a moment, rolled his eyes, and answered, "Neutral Lands Army." "Ding, ding, ding, ding!" Ava shouted. "Give that boy a prize." Peter laughed, then continued. "We, the proud soldiers of the NLA," he pointed to the new soldier and waited. "Neutral Lands Army," Mitch said with enthusiasm. Peter smiled and continued. "Keep the land safe by keeping the Neutral Lands safe. Day and night, here and beyond." Ava and Mitch laughed at Peter's excitement at reciting the recruitment tagline. "My question is, how do we do it without getting lost?" the newbie asked. "It's different during the day," Ava continued, "when you can see where you're going. At night, you and your partner need to ride a pattern, and you have to stay aware where you are. In this darkness, surrounded by nothing but dirt, you can get lost. No doubt about it. You have to learn your bearings when patrolling the Neutral Lands at night." "So, how do you know how far to go and when to turn around to return to Hubland?" Mitch asked. "You just do, newbie," Peter said. "That doesn't help me," he replied. "You get a sense of where you are the more you do it," Peter continued. "And the more you do it, the more you're going to want to do it in comfort," Peter said, pointing to his saddle, which had been modified with pillows. "Oh, geez," Ava said, shaking her head. "Hey, if you're going to be riding all day, why not save yourself the pain and agony at the end of the day?" "Because you look like an idiot," Ava answered. The new soldier laughed. "You laughing at that?" "Just wait," Peter continued, pointing at the new guy. "Riding around the Neutral Lands, or just standing guard in Hubland, you'll find out soon enough what I'm talking about, newbie. This can literally be a pain in the butt." "And speaking of Hubland," Ava interrupted, "it appears we have arrived." In front of them, the 3 soldiers could see a statue on a giant square brick base, lit by 4 giant enclosed torches, one on each corner. The 3 soldiers approached 2 soldiers who were also on horseback in front of the backside of the large base. The base was about 7 feet high. You could barely see the statue, which looked to be a man holding the hand of a child. As they approached, the 2 soldiers moved towards them, hands on their guns. Team Bonfilius returning from a Tech Kingdom run, Peter said. The snow falls on Cradle Day. Team Manetta standing guard, one of the soldiers by the base of the statue answered, and the rings glisten. All 5 of the soldiers saluted. Victor, Peter said with a nod. Hello, Pete, Victor responded, also with a nod. He retrieved a small notebook from his front pocket. Anything to report? Not a thing, Peter replied, while he, too, retrieved a small notebook from his pocket. Anything to report from Hubland? Victor smiled. Same as always. Nothing to report. Peter wrote in his notebook and said, Victor, Tom, have you met Matt? It's Mitch, the new soldier said. No, it's Matt, Victor said, because for the next few weeks you are going to get walked all over. The 4 veteran soldiers laughed. Peter, Ava, and... Peter looked over to Mitch and smiled. And Mitch relieved Victor and Tom from Hubland. Victor then said, Victor and Tom relinquish Hubland to Peter, Ava, and Mitch to proceed on a tech merch run. Victor and Peter swapped notebooks. They both reviewed them, then initialed, and handed them back. The 5 soldiers saluted each other. Have a good ride, gentlemen, Peter said as Victor and Tom turned and headed into the darkness. So they are going to TechLand, then towards Merchant Valley, then back here to Hubland, Mitch asked. Yep, Ava answered. Seems that tonight we've added quite a few runs in TechLand's direction, Ava said, looking at Peter. Well, Captain Hobogon must suspect something's up, Peter said, looking in the direction of the 2 soldiers who disappeared. Or maybe this is going to be the new normal. Peter turned his horse and headed to the other side of the base. Mitch followed, while Ava stayed put. Well, Mitch, you just finished your first run as a soldier of the Neutral Lands Army. Was it everything you expected it to be? Mitch thought a moment. I'm not really sure what I expected, to be honest. Well, expect a lot of cold nights, Peter quickly replied with a laugh. They circled to the other side of the base. The giant enclosed torches on the base lit up the barren dirt land all around it. However, ahead of them was a glow of lights. All right, what's out there, newbie? Peter asked, pointing straight ahead to the glow. Mitch rolled his eyes. Merchant Valley. Our rights, the Western Territories. And to our left, TechLand. And finally, behind us, the Kingdom. Very good, Peter said with a smile at Mitch. He continued on around the base to the other side. Ding, 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 give that boy a prize, Ava said as the 2 came around. Doesn't everyone know the lands? Mitch asked. You'd be surprised, Peter answered. Mitch thought for a moment. So, we just came from the vicinity of the kingdom, he said, staring out in the darkness trying to see the faint glow of the castle of the kingdom's lights. Why didn't we go in? Not our job, Ava responded. Mitch pondered a response for a moment, then said, So, we never actually enter into any of the lands? Nope, Peter answered. Well, that doesn't make any sense, Mitch said. Look, Matt, Ava started. Mitch, the new young soldier quickly responded. Matt, Mitch, whatever. What you need to remember is that we patrol the neutral lands. That's it. The lands take care of themselves. It was different back in the day when the gang of... But Ava didn't get to finish. Suddenly, a violent wind kicked up out of nowhere and pummeled them with dirt and debris. The 4 giant enclosed torches on the base of the statue and the enclosed torches on the horses all blew out. Hey, what the heck? Peter exclaimed. The horses reared up and bucked wildly. Dismount, Peter yelled. Ava and Peter jumped off their horses. Ava's horse kicked back and hit her right in the chest. As she fell backward, she hit her head against the large base. She stumbled forward in pain and was kicked once again by her horse. This time she fell to the ground and was down for the count. Mitch was still on his horse as it bucked wildly. He flew off the back and slammed into the ground, and he was knocked unconscious. All 3 horses ran in circles and took off into the darkness. Peter tried to run towards Ava, but the wind held him in place. Peter was picked up by the wind and thrown against the base of the statue. He was knocked out cold. Then the wind stopped, and in the darkness was silence. Thank you for listening to episode 1 of The Lands, Something is Happening, part 1. What the heck is happening there? Obviously, something is happening in the lands. Certainly hope that Ava, Peter, and Mitch will be okay. Only way to find out, I suppose, is to listen to the next episode. Like I said at the intro, I've been writing the lands for over 30 years. At first, it started out as just something funny, just a little short story, but then it grew and grew, and it continues to grow, and now it's an ongoing saga that isn't even finished yet. But chapter 1, Something is Happening, is at least done. All 7 episodes of it will all soon be released. Couple of little things about this episode. There are 3 nods to former attractions. See if you can figure out what those are. There's obviously mentions of some, something sounding familiar to what you might know. There's also a little nod to a TV show that I watched. It used to be on about 20 years ago that I really enjoyed. And this was something they used to have in almost every episode. So I kind of use that as a reference. It definitely has grown, and citizens of the lands have been screaming in my head for a long time to make this a reality. So I thank you for listening to a little bit of their stories. Obviously, many more stories and many more characters or citizens for you to meet. But for right now, I have a message from one of them. This is from Jess Donner, who you may remember had a couple scenes with his friend Gary. I believe scene 2 and scene 4, but he wanted me to pass this along to you. So Jess says, okay, if you want to stay up to date of what's happening in the lands, because something is happening, make sure you subscribe and hit notifications to be aware of more opportunities to visit the lands. Will everything be okay? I don't know. But keep visiting the lands to find out. Thank you, Jess. Appreciate that. If you have any comments, please feel free to write them in the comment box. I will try to respond to them as much as I can. And please, if you enjoyed this, hit like. Hopefully you liked it enough to listen to future episodes that will be coming in soon. So in the meantime, keep the spirit alive and keep on visiting the lands. Take care.